It was past midnight at Riverside Community Hospital in Ohio. Emma, a tired nurse finishing her shift, just wanted to go home. But when the emergency doors flew open, she froze. A man stumbled in, bleeding from his side, clutching his jacket like he was hiding something. His clothes looked too expensive for this neighborhood, and his calm stare didn't match the pain on his face. Emma knew she should call security, but instead, she grabbed gloves and helped him. She didn't know it yet, but the man she was saving was the most dangerous person her brother worked for. Emma moved quickly, cutting open the man's shirt to reach the wound. It wasn't deep, but it was clean, like someone had aimed to scare, not kill. The man didn't flinch. His silence felt heavier than any scream. She kept asking who did this, but he said nothing. His breathing slowed as she stitched him up. The hospital halls were quiet, just the hum of lights and distant rain. Emma felt something strange, fear mixed with curiosity. Whoever he was, he carried danger like a shadow, and she couldn't look away from it. After she patched him up, Emma noticed a gold ring on his finger shaped like a lion's head. The detail caught her eye. It looked handmade, old and expensive. When she tried to ask about it, he just pulled his hand away and told her softly, "Forget you saw me." Then he stood, buttoned his coat, and winced at the pain. Emma wanted to stop him, but something in his eyes made her freeze. He looked both powerful and broken, like someone used to control but running out of time. The lights flickered above her, dimming for a second before humming back on. Emma's chest tightened. It wasn't the first time the power had glitched, but tonight it felt different. She peeked through the window blinds and saw two dark cars idling near the ambulance bay. A figure stepped out, looked around, and went back inside the car. The man she helped saw it too. "I can't stay," he muttered, steady but tense. Before she could stop him, he slipped out through the side exit like he'd memorized the building. When morning came, Emma tried to forget. She finished her shift, grabbed her bag and walked out into the cool air. The rain had stopped, leaving the parking lot wet and shining under the streetlights. She reached her car, opened the door, and froze. On the passenger seat was a small jar of imported honey. A note was taped to it that said, "For saving me." There was no name, no signature, just that neat handwriting. Her stomach dropped. Gratitude from a stranger shouldn't feel like a threat, but it did. That evening, Emma's brother Jake stopped by her apartment. He worked at a small auto shop and was always covered in grease and laughter, but tonight he looked tense. He asked if anyone strange had come by the hospital, his tone too casual to be real. Emma brushed it off and offered him dinner, but he barely ate. When he left, she watched from her window. His car paused at the end of the street, like he was checking if someone followed him. A chill ran down her arms. Something was off. Later that night, the news played softly in her living room. Emma nearly dropped her tea when she saw the headline, "Shootout Downtown, Crime Boss Leon Survives Ambush." The photo showed the same man she'd treated. Same face, same calm eyes. Her knees went weak. She sat on the couch, staring at the screen. The man she'd helped was a wanted name, the same Leon who controlled half the city's underground. Emma realized she hadn't saved a stranger. She'd saved someone every cop in Ohio was looking for. Emma didn't sleep. Every sound outside made her jump. She checked the door locks twice, then 3 times. When dawn came, she forced herself to go back to work. At the hospital, people whispered about the news. 2 FBI agents showed up by noon, flashing badges and asking questions about anyone who'd come in injured last night. Emma's hands went cold. They described him vaguely, but she knew. She smiled politely, said she hadn't seen anything unusual, and walked away. Her heart pounded as she realized she was now hiding a criminal. That night, she parked outside her apartment and sat for a moment before getting out. Something on her dashboard caught her eye, a folded bus ticket from 1999, with her name written on it in ink. She didn't recognize the handwriting. Emma picked it up slowly. It wasn't there that morning. Her chest tightened. She looked around, but the parking lot was empty. The street lamp buzzed overhead, throwing weak light. The air smelled like rain again, heavy and familiar. She went inside and locked the door, holding the old ticket like a warning. The next day, Emma found herself jumping at every sound. She tried to focus on her patients, but her mind kept drifting. Around noon, she noticed a man sitting in the waiting area, pretending to read a magazine. He wasn't sick. His coat was dry, even though it was raining outside. Every few minutes, he looked at her. When she went to grab a chart, he disappeared. She checked the door. Gone. Fear crept in again, quiet but steady, like water dripping behind a wall you can't see. That evening, Jake called her, voice shaking slightly. He said he'd been promoted to a better job at the shop, one that paid dangerously good money. Emma laughed at first, but stopped when she heard voices in the background, deep, unfamiliar ones. He quickly said he'd call back and hung up. She stood there, phone in hand, staring at the screen. She didn't know what scared her more, the idea that her brother was lying, or that she already knew who he was working for. Emma tried to tell herself she was imagining things. People get raises, people meet new bosses. But when she saw a black car following her on the way home, everything inside her tightened. The car never passed her, just stayed 2 turns behind. When she parked, it kept going. No plates on the front, tinted windows. She waited inside her car for 10 minutes, heart pounding. Finally, she went upstairs and peeked through her blinds. Nothing, just empty road and quiet rain, but the fear stayed like a weight. 2 days later, she got called into the supervisor's office. The FBI had returned, asking for full camera footage of the emergency entrance. Emma nodded, acting calm, but the footage from that night had a blackout right when Leon entered. Power outage. No backup feed. Her boss sighed, assuming it was just bad luck. Emma wanted to confess everything but couldn't. Something deep inside whispered that speaking up would only drag Jake into danger. She left the office with shaking hands and a heart that didn't slow for hours. At home, Emma noticed her window slightly open. The rain had stopped, but drops still clung to the frame. She looked around. Nothing stolen. Then she saw the jar of honey on the table. She hadn't left it there. The lid was off. A note inside read, "You're safer than you think." She stepped back, pulse racing. Someone had been inside her apartment again. She locked the door, shut every window, and sat on the floor with her head in her hands. Whatever this was, it wasn't over. The next day, Jake stopped by again, smiling too hard. He brought takeout and acted like everything was fine, but when Emma mentioned the news about Leon, his face changed. He said, "You don't want to get involved with people like that." His voice shook slightly. When she pressed him, he changed the subject and left early. Emma felt sick. She knew that nervous tone. Jake only used it when he was hiding something. The brother she once trusted was slowly becoming a stranger. Emma's neighbor mentioned seeing a man waiting near her door last night, tall and well-dressed. She brushed it off, pretending not to care, but her hands trembled. Later, when she got home, she found a red thread tied neatly around her doorknob. It looked new, freshly knotted, and meaningless, but something about it felt like a message. She didn't touch it. She just stared, wondering what it meant and who wanted her to see it. At the hospital, the air felt different. People whispered in hallways, and every shadow felt like someone watching. Emma checked her locker during break. A folded paper was inside, a single line, "Keep your brother close." She froze, looking around the empty room. No one was there. Her hands shook as she shoved it into her pocket. The sound of the rain outside grew louder, hitting the windows like small warnings she couldn't escape. That evening she drove to Jake's auto shop without telling him. The lights were still on, though it was almost midnight. She watched through the window as her brother handed a small envelope to a man in a black coat. The man gave him a nod and left in a silver car. Jake leaned against the wall, rubbing his face like he was tired of lying. Emma sat in her car, fighting the urge to storm in. But she didn't. She just watched and felt something break inside her. Back home, she couldn't sleep. Every few hours, a car passed outside, its headlights flashing across her ceiling. Her phone buzzed once. An unknown number. He's not the enemy. That was all. No name, no clue who sent it. She stared at it for a long time before deleting it. Whoever he was, they were watching both her and Jake. She felt trapped between two secrets she didn't understand. The next day, Emma received a patient in the ER with a gunshot wound. It wasn't Leone. But the man had the same lion ring on a chain around his neck. When she touched it to move it aside, he opened his eyes weakly and whispered, "He keeps his promises." Then he passed out. Emma stepped back, her throat dry. Promises. Honey. Red thread. Everything felt connected, but she couldn't see how. She finished her shift in silence, afraid to even ask questions anymore. Emma sat at her small kitchen table with a cup of tea, the rain outside tapping softly against the window. The honey jar sat in front of her again, now half empty. She turned it slowly in her hands, wondering if helping someone could really ruin your life. She remembered her mom's words, "Good deeds don't always bring peace." The thought stayed with her. She stared at the empty street below and felt more alone than ever. Later that night, she heard footsteps outside her door. Then silence. She peeked through the peephole. No one there. She waited, holding her breath. Then a car engine started downstairs and faded away. Emma backed away from the door and sat down on the couch. Her pulse racing, she realized fear had become part of her routine. Every night now felt like a waiting game. She didn't even know what she was waiting for. The next morning, Emma found her car door slightly open. Inside, on the seat, was another note. "You did good. Stay quiet." The handwriting matched the honey note. She tore it up and threw it away, but it didn't matter. Someone wanted her silence, and she was giving it. Every instinct told her to go to the police, but another part, stronger and louder, told her to protect Jake first. At work, her friend and co-worker Michelle mentioned that Jake had been seen at a warehouse near the docks. "Big delivery trucks go there all night," she said. Emma's stomach dropped. The docks were Leone's territory. She didn't say a word, just nodded and pretended not to care. But her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She knew she had to see it for herself. That night, Emma drove toward the docks. The fog was thick, the streetlights dim. She parked a few blocks away and walked quietly through puddles. The smell of diesel and salt filled the air. When she reached the warehouse, she saw men carrying boxes, their movements quick and organized. Then she saw Jake, helping, laughing, acting like he belonged, and standing nearby, giving orders, was the same man from that night, Mr. Leone. Emma's breath caught. She realized her act of kindness had dragged her straight into her brother's world. The man she saved was the reason Jake was still alive, and maybe the reason he couldn't leave. She stayed hidden behind a container, watching Leona pat Jake's shoulder like they were family. Her chest ached with guilt. Saving one man had tangled her into a web that no good heart could escape. Emma crouched behind the metal crates, barely breathing. Leone's voice carried through the fog, steady, calm, full of quiet power. She watched Jake nod at his words, like a loyal employee. Then Leone handed him an envelope and motioned for everyone to leave. Emma waited until the area cleared before slipping back to her car. Her mind spun. She had helped a criminal live, and now her brother was standing beside him. For the first time, she wondered if saving a life could destroy two others in return. That night, Emma confronted Jake at their mother's old house. He looked tired but calm, wiping his hands with a rag that smelled of oil and fear. She demanded to know the truth, but he avoided her eyes. He said he owed Leone money, and this was just work. She didn't believe it. His voice cracked when he promised it would be over soon. When she mentioned the jar of honey, he froze. Then he whispered, "You shouldn't have helped him, Em." She left before crying in front of him. The next few days dragged by in silence. Emma avoided calls, skipped breaks, and barely ate. At night, she kept hearing the same faint bell sound outside her window, soft, distant, like a warning she couldn't place. She told herself it was nothing, but when she looked outside, she sometimes saw the glint of headlights, just parked and waiting. Her world had shrunk to two fears: losing her brother or being found by the man she had saved. Both felt equally possible now. At the hospital, one of the security guards handed her an envelope. "Someone dropped this for you," he said. Inside was a folded note and a small key. The note read, "You still have a choice." No name, no details. Emma turned the key in her hand. It looked like it belonged to a locker or box. She felt her stomach twist. Whatever choice they meant, it wouldn't be simple. She hid the key in her pocket and went back to work, pretending everything was fine while her thoughts raced. The rain came heavy that night, flooding the hospital parking lot. During her break, Emma sat by the window folding fresh sheets. The room was quiet, except for the hum of machines. She thought about her brother as she worked, each fold neat and steady. She wondered when their lives had turned from simple to dangerous. She wished she could go back to that small kitchen in their childhood home, when problems were small and hope was easy. The sound of thunder brought her back to now, cold, complicated, uncertain. The next morning, her supervisor told her the FBI wanted another round of staff interviews. Emma nodded, keeping her face calm, but panic clawed at her chest. She couldn't lie again, but telling the truth would ruin Jake. She walked to the staff room, looked at her reflection in the vending machine glass, and realized she didn't recognize herself anymore. She had become someone who hid secrets from the law for family. And maybe, deep down, she didn't even regret it. When Emma returned home, a note was slipped under her door. This time the message said, "Don't betray him. He's the reason your brother's alive." Her knees went weak. She sat on the floor reading it again. Everything she thought she understood suddenly felt wrong. If Leonie was protecting Jake, then who was the real danger? The thought unsettled her. She tore up the note but couldn't throw it away. She hid the pieces inside her drawer, afraid even the trash might tell a story. Emma couldn't let it go. She drove to Jake's auto shop after midnight and searched his toolbox. Inside, under a pile of wrenches, she found a small flash drive wrapped in a piece of cloth. The key she'd been given fit a small lockbox beside it. Inside was another note. "Truth doesn't always come clean." She didn't know what the drive contained, but her gut told her it was what Leonie wanted. For the first time she realized she might be holding something worth killing for. When she got home, all the lights in her apartment flickered and went out. The sudden darkness felt alive. Emma froze, listening. The air was heavy, filled with the faint smell of rain drifting through the cracks. Then a soft knock echoed at her door. 3 times, she didn't move. The knock stopped. A voice came from the other side, calm and familiar. "It's me." She opened the door a few inches. Leona stood there again, pale and bleeding, like the night they first met. Leon leaned against the wall, his shirt soaked with blood again. He looked weaker now, but his eyes were steady. He said he needed her help one last time. Emma hesitated, but pulled him inside, locking the door. As she stitched him up, he told her Jake had unknowingly been caught in a trap. Someone inside the FBI wanted to frame him and destroy Leon's name. Emma's hands trembled as she worked. When she finished, Leon said softly, "You already saved me once. Can you do it again?" If you're wondering how Emma's choice will change everything, you might want to subscribe to see what happens next. Leon told her that years ago, Jake had saved his son during a car accident. Since then, he had kept Jake under his protection. The so-called Mafia boss wasn't what people said. He kept records, debts, names, and evidence that could ruin powerful men pretending to be heroes. Emma struggled to believe him. But when she saw the sincerity in his tired eyes, something inside her shifted. Maybe her act of mercy hadn't helped a monster but exposed the wrong kind of men instead. He explained that the flash drive from Jake's toolbox held proof of corruption inside law enforcement. Someone wanted it gone. Emma realized that was why the cars followed her and why the notes warned her to stay silent. She asked why he trusted her. Leon said, Because you helped without asking who I was." Then he stood, still weak, and asked her to deliver the drive to a contact who could clear Jake's name. Emma hesitated, fear pressing on her chest. But she nodded. She couldn't walk away now. Emma drove through the quiet streets at dawn, gripping the flash drive tightly. Every light felt too bright, every car behind her suspicious. She kept checking her mirrors, her heart beating fast. She parked near an old diner, the meeting spot Leone had mentioned. A man in a dark jacket waited inside, drinking coffee. She sat across from him and slid the flash drive across the table. He smiled faintly and pocketed it. "You did the right thing," he said, but his eyes didn't match his words. As Emma left the diner, 2 black cars pulled up outside. She froze. Agents stepped out with badges and guns drawn, shouting her name. The man she'd just met slipped out the back door without a glance. Within seconds she was handcuffed and shoved into a vehicle. They told her she was under arrest for aiding a wanted criminal and tampering with evidence. She tried to explain, but no one listened. The flash drive was gone. Her good deed had finally turned against her completely. In the interrogation room, the light buzzed overhead. A tired-looking agent showed her photos of Jake with Leone, framed to look criminal. "You and your brother have been helping him hide money," he said. Emma shook her head, voice breaking, saying it wasn't true. They didn't care. They had a story already written, and she was the easy ending. When they finally left the room, she sat there in silence, realizing she was trapped inside someone else's lie. The next morning, Jake appeared in custody too. His face was pale, eyes red from sleeplessness. He tried to smile at her through the glass wall, but it came out weak. She wanted to hate him for hiding the truth, but she couldn't. He was just as lost as she was. He mouthed, "I'm sorry." Emma turned away, tears stinging her eyes. Everything they'd tried to protect had fallen apart. It felt like no mercy in the world could undo this mess. 2 days later, everything changed. A leak hit the news, dozens of emails and files exposing corruption inside the FBI's local branch. Photos, payments, cover-ups. The same lion symbol from Leone's ring appeared on every document. The public story flipped overnight. Leone wasn't a crime lord, he'd been gathering proof against the real criminals. Emma's arrest suddenly looked like a mistake. Reporters filled the courthouse, chasing the story of the nurse who helped the wrong man. The charges against Emma and Jake were quietly dropped, but no one offered apologies. The agency called it a misunderstanding. Leone vanished again, leaving no trail. The only thing left behind was another jar of imported honey on Emma's doorstep, this one sealed tight. The note inside read, "Some debts can't be paid with money." Emma stood there in the morning light, unsure if she felt gratitude or fear, maybe both. Jake left the city soon after, saying he needed a fresh start. Emma stayed. She returned to her night shifts, quieter now, slower to trust. The hospital felt the same, but she didn't. Every new patient reminded her that kindness was never simple. Sometimes it saved lives, sometimes it ruined them, but she couldn't stop being who she was. Helping people was in her bones, even if the cost was heavy. One rainy night, Emma walked past the emergency doors where it all began. For a second, she thought she saw Leone's reflection in the glass, standing outside watching her. But when she turned, there was no one there. Only the empty street, the faint smell of rain, and the echo of a distant bell rolling through the city. She smiled a little, unsure why, and walked back inside. Weeks passed. The city slowly forgot the scandal. Emma didn't. Sometimes she caught herself looking for that lion ring in crowds or listening for that bell. It reminded her that the world wasn't split between good and evil. It was full of messy gray spaces where people did bad things for good reasons. And maybe that was what made them human. Jake called one evening from another state. He had found steady work and sounded lighter than before. He told her he was proud of her, that Leone's people had disappeared for good. Emma listened quietly, smiling through tears. When the call ended, she looked at the honey jar on her shelf. It had never been opened. She decided to leave it that way. Some stories didn't need endings. They just needed peace. A month later, a small envelope arrived at the hospital front desk with no return address. Inside was a single red thread and a note: "The world needs more people like you." Emma stared at it for a long time before putting it in her locker. It didn't scare her this time. It felt like closure, the kind that doesn't demand understanding. She smiled softly and went back to work. One evening, as the sun set over Riverside, Emma walked past the park where kids were playing. For the first time in months, she felt calm. She realized that maybe doing the right thing wasn't about being safe, it was about choosing compassion, even when it hurts. That thought stayed with her like a quiet warmth. She wasn't proud of everything she'd done, but she didn't regret it either. Later that night, Emma closed her shift and stepped outside into the rain. The sound of a bell echoed faintly from the church down the street. She looked up at the sky, breathing in the wet air. Somewhere out there, Leone was probably still watching the city in his own way. She whispered a small thank you to the wind and walked to her car. The world felt uncertain but lighter, as if mercy had finally balanced its debt.